Hello, nice to see you again. Today's topic is Rachmaninoff. There are several reasons why I picked this topic today. First one, obviously, Rachmaninoff is one of, I think, many people's favorite composer. Second reason is, you remember some topics ago, I picked Xiao Taiden. Some people call Xiao Taiden Taiwanese Rachmaninoff. Maybe that is right or wrong, you make a decision. But both composers definitely have highly skilled as a composer, but most important elements they possess is probably their ability to write very beautiful melody and phrasings. Third one is a late study done by not the musicians but the scientists in South Korea. They have come up with this software program about many different elements of their compositions by the 18th and 19th century composers, and then they put into this system and they came up with the Rachmaninoff being the number one most innovative composer of 18th and 19th century. Even more than Beethoven, that I'm not sure I agree. And the last reason is, I think some people who are familiar with pop music might know, All by Myself. That's a tune written by Eric Carmen, but in 1975. But the revival of that in 1996 by Celine Dion, that became a very famous tune, in which Eric Carmen he uses a little bit of same chord progression in the second movement of Rachmaninoff's second piano concerto. By the time he composed this, he thought that was a public domain. He didn't have to pay. But later on he found out it was still copyrighted, so he had to pay money to Rachmaninoff's family and the state. And this Rachmaninoff second piano concerto was actually used in the movie, British film 1945 called Brief Encounter. That's about extramarital affair right before the World War II. But every time these two main characters meet, the Rachmaninoff second piano concerto would be in the background. Anyways, back to Eric Carmen. He also composed a piece called Never Gonna Fall in Love Again in 1976. He used Rachmaninoff Symphony No. 2 for that. So Eric Carmen, being classically trained musician, because his aunt is a violinist in Cleveland Orchestra, so that's how this commonality and the Rachmaninoff and the pop music kind of began that emergency. Okay, before I go into Rachmaninoff, I would like to talk about some aspects of this cross-referencing timeline. When Rachmaninoff was alive, the end of 19th century and the beginning of 20th century, there are many wonderful composers who were writing very wonderful music everywhere in the world. In Finland, Sibelius. He wrote Second Symphony in 1903, right after Rachmaninoff is writing his Second Symphony, which is in 1901. In Denmark, there's a Nielsen. In Britain, Elgar was a famous, very popular composer. Holst was kind of coming up. In France, Debussy, definitely. And then later on, the Ravel. So you can see, of course, Germany, Austria. We cannot forget Gustav Mahler. He was just like Rachmaninoff, very successful opera conductor, but also a very important composer. Today, I'm not going to go into details of Rachmaninoff biographical details. Many different pieces, but what I think and what I feel is important relationship and the events in his life which basically shaped his musical life. He was born in an aristocratic family, which means very high society people, and very proper family. And maybe because of that, there's always music and musicians in the family and the relatives. And so he started taking piano lessons at age 4. And I'll skip to when he goes into the conservatory. When he was age 12, he entered famous Zverev studio. Zverev was very respected piano faculty at the Moscow Conservatory, and a very special one, even today's standard, I would say. Because Zverev had a very interesting teaching and training method. So if you were accepted as his student, you had to live in his house. Yes, you cannot just commute. You had to stay in his house. And getting up 4 in the morning, have breakfast, and go practice. So he really demanded lots of practice and discipline. But not only that, he really recommended and required what kind of books they should be reading. And he recommended go see wonderful paintings and sculptures at museums and galleries. He, of course, took all his students to the latest concerts of the biggest stars of that time. His idea was, if you would not let the students experience and exposed to the really high level of cultural experiences, they would lose and they would not develop the senses. So even the food, this and that, I don't know whether an appropriate example or not. If you're feeding somebody junk food and fast food every day, every meal, do you think that person will develop appreciation for fine cuisine with the use of foie gras and something like that? I don't think so. So that was his idea. So Rachmaninoff, 4 years he spent with Zverev. I think that has a very important component of how he became as a pianist, composer later on. That much of details, that much of demand on himself. It's also Scriabin was actually at the same time, he was a fellow student of Zverev. It's a little ironic because Scriabin had a very small hand, stretch only ninth, which is octave plus 1 seconds. And Rachmaninoff, his hand could reach from do to so, do to do octave plus do to so 12th. So such a big difference in the hand sizes, but they studied together and they became a very important figure in Russian music. So after 4 years studying with Zverev, Rachmaninoff became more interested in composing, and he started composing, and he needed his own piano, and he asked for Zverev to provide that in a different room, but Zverev refused because Zverev is a pianist, piano teacher. He wanted Rachmaninoff and all the students to become a pianist, and so spending too much time in composition was going to be a little bit of waste in his mind. So therefore he got out of his house. He stayed with his aunt. And so at age 19, he graduated from conservatory writing one-act opera, Aleko. That was based on Pushkin's Gypsy poem. And it was performed at Bolshoi Theater in Moscow. That's a very important theater, biggest theater. And Tchaikovsky knew about this event. He heard and he attended. And he said he praised the quality of Rachmaninoff's opera. Amazing. That was 1892. And 1893, Tchaikovsky conducted his last symphony, Pathetique, and 9 days after, he passed away. So, Rachmaninoff, well, not just Rachmaninoff, everybody in Russia and everyone in the world, music world, was shocked. Tchaikovsky was a very important composer, and who attended Rachmaninoff's graduation performance, suddenly passed away. So after that, Rachmaninoff lost a little bit of energy and inspiration, and so he couldn't write the big pieces. One trio, Elegy, dedicated to Tchaikovsky in memory, but that was a little bit of downtime. And so after that, he picked up little energy and he started writing for his first symphony. And it took 2 years. That's quite a long time. This is the first symphony. So he wrote. And then there's a performance came, and this is kind of famous story, but it bombed. The conductor, Glazunov, some people thought he was drunk. Maybe so, maybe not. But the fact is, this particular orchestra, which was to present Russian music, so they had 3 world premieres. World premieres, that means like the first time ever played in the world. As I know, there could be mistakes in the parts. It takes a long time. So it's not only one piece, his Rachmaninoff's first symphony, but the 2 others. So there was absolutely underprepared. Rachmaninoff said later on, of course the performance was not good, Glazunov was not really prepared, but most importantly, he was disappointed even at first rehearsal. He thought his own writing, his own composition he lost confidence, self-confidence. And it took more than 3 years to recover. His friend recommended that he would go through psychotherapy, hypnotherapy, and it took 3 years and gained the confidence. Meanwhile, he picked up a conducting position and conducting the orchestra and teaching piano. So the piece you have been hearing up to now, the second piano concerto, that is his recovery piece. And so from that, it was biggest success. And then he will continue to produce wonderful pieces. So now you'll start to hear the second symphony. And another big event is obviously Russian Revolution. You can imagine there are two important reasons why he was kind of scared about the Russian Revolution. At that time, he was the principal conductor of Bolshoi Theater, which is the main theater, opera house in Moscow. So he was in management position. And of course, Russian Revolution, that means workers. So management versus workers. But not only that, from his personal background, because he was from aristocratic family. Now, that's definitely bourgeois, not proletariat. So he knew if this revolution is going to happen, his family is going to be in very, very dangerous position. So soon as he heard this political, social changes, he got out. He went on, brought all family to Switzerland, then later on to the United States. First in New York, later on to Beverly Hills. You know, when he went to New York, even though he spoke some English, but all the correspondence had to be Russian, because that's what he was. He put all of the apartments very, very Russian, and he's not really assimilated to the American way. But he really appreciated the United States, because before his death, both himself and his wife became a naturalized citizen. So now you're hearing the last piece, the symphonic dances, which was the biggest, well, the big piece, last big piece he wrote, the Opus 45. After that, small pieces, unpublished, so forth. Anyways, in this piece, he put opening of his failed first symphony, and one of his favorite subject, Dies Irae. That theme, and also the Russian all-night vigil, which has a resurrection meaning. It's a very vibrant, rhythmic, and uses saxophone, alto saxophone, just like pictures exhibition, Mussorgsky. Also like ironic Glazunov, that the conductor butchered his first symphony, just like Glazunov saxophone concerto, he uses that instrument. So I hope that little bit of time, of course, I can talk about Rachmaninoff and the Rachmaninoff pieces many hours, but hopefully you had some things and information you probably did not know before. So thank you again, and I hope to see you again. Bye bye.